Good morning, family. Good morning, family. Should I just start speaking other languages until I get to yours? Buenos días, familia. ¿Cómo está la familia? ¿Todo bien? Ah, ándale. Guten Tag. Ni hao. Ni xing ti hao ma. You know, ni hao. Ni xing ti hao ma. Hello, how are you? She. Thank you. What else? Who else we got in the room? Speak your language. Say hello. Bonjour, monsieur. Comment allez-vous? Très bien. Who else? Come on, don't be scared, as we say in DC. Don't be scared. Say, what was that? Where are you, brother? That was with some love. He said that from the back of the room like Charles Dutton. That was like James Earl Jones stuff. Say that one more time. Malola le, which is Tongan. My brother's in the house. So we've got England, Canada, Ireland, Scotland, Australia. Carrie, you said those. We got Tonga. We've got all the people. We've got all the people. Maybe they're not living there, but they're from there. We come from all the people, don't we? Don't we? Yes. We come from all the people. Good morning. Let me give thanks. It's important to start a gathering of human beings with gratitude, yeah? Gratitude and love. Raquel's been nervous for several months since they let her know she would be introducing me. That's not an easy thing to do if you're not used to being on a stage in front of a bunch of wild people. And so, Raquel, where'd you go? You already moved on me. So let's shower her with some love for that. That was not easy to do. Raquel, thank you. What a great honor. Perfect person to have do that. I really am honored. Raquel is, you know, when I met her, she was a baby girl. She would tell you that she's an old soul, and so she was already old and all this. But I don't know how. What were you, like early 20s when we met? Something like that, out in California. What was the event? No, it was up at Lutheran, CLU, I think. Yeah, maybe it's CYC, All-State, you know. And some young people, you meet them and they immediately touch you. Their spirit reaches out and touches you, and and you fall in love. You realize in that moment, wow, this is why I'm here. This is what we're all here for, right? And some young people make that obvious by the essence of their aura, by the fragrance that comes after rain. The fragrance after rain, after the pain, after the struggle, after the heartbreak and trauma, displacement and abandonment and abuse. Some young people announce themselves to you as if to say, I'm still here, and I have so many things I want to do in this life, and will you please support me? Will you lift me up? Will you feed me and nurture me? And if you do, I will do the same for you. And Raquel was one of those souls I met all those years ago, and it's been a priceless relationship. That's the word, right, Carrie? That's the word for the week. Relationship. A relationship. By virtue of our relations, we find voyage, passage, ship, movement across the wide and often harsh terrain of the waters of life. In other words, only by virtue of our relations do we stay afloat in the waters of this world. Relationship. We're on a voyage. We're in a vessel together. Raquel and I, we just went hiking the other day. I have to say, 3 times this spring out in California, I've gone hiking and almost stepped on a rattlesnake 3 times. 3 times. And I hadn't seen any rattlesnakes out there really, I don't think, previously. I've been living out there a few years now. And so I'm trying to decipher the meaning of these encounters. Why do I keep encountering these brothers and sisters of mine, and they're shaking and they're hissing and rattling? Raquel, I have to tell you, was straight Zen. As nervous as she was about introducing me, she was straight Zen because she was ahead of me on the path, and I was going to let her take one for the team. I have to admit, I was going to let her take one for the team. I love you, Raquel, but we both heard the rattle at the same time, and the snake was right at her ankle, literally. I was right behind her. I saw the snake. My mind registered, nah. So I took a step back. I didn't take a step forward, to protect her. I took a step back. I said, nah. And Raquel didn't even look down. She went straight Zen. She didn't even look down, no pause or hesitation. She just kept on trucking. She kept moving, which was probably why she didn't get bit. That was smooth. That was smooth, man. It is our state of being when we encounter or are exposed to threat, danger, violence, impending harm that makes all the difference, because our condition, our internal state of being will therefore dictate the way in which we access or fail to access our giftedness for not only being in the world, but for our servitude. Yes? You with me on that one? Our internal condition dictates so much of the way in which we show up for those critical moments, whether we freeze in the presence of danger and then cause the danger to be amplified by our own paralysis, or we stay in our state of flow, which has a way of minimizing the danger and threat. We're talking about all aspects of our being. We're talking about our children and their relationship with self. We're talking about our relationship with them and our relationship with one another in this room. Our internal condition es todo. It's everything. Es la vida. Es life. And so, family, brothers and sisters, we start this gathering in gratitude. Carrie, so very. Carrie and her team, her family, her circle, her tribe, her kinship web of life have been working and working and working. And I don't mean to imply the intellectual aspect, though certainly there has been plenty of that. I mean, they have been laboring from the heart and the soul for so very long to make this gathering together that you and I are blessed by to be a part of. We've come from so many places to be here in coexistence. They have labored from the essential places to make this moment be all that it can be, to make it bear fruit. There's a difference between an orchard and an orchard in fruit, in blossom, in harvest, in bounty, in abundance, in fruitfulness. And so let's take this moment of gratitude to shower our love and appreciation on the team that has made this all possible, because we cannot appreciate them enough. Can we do that, please? Stand up, Carrie. Carrie, stand up. Team, stand up. Everybody stand up. Whole team, whole team. Whole team. The whole team. Okay, we got some shy interns. I'd like to embarrass you further. Can you interns please come up on the stage very quickly? Come up on the stage very quickly. Come on, come on, come on. Calling all interns. Y'all thought this was gonna just be a dry PowerPoint presentation, didn't you? Tell the truth. Is this all the interns? Really, this is all of you? Okay, let me get here. Are you our photographer for the day?
Yes.
¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name, please?
Alexis.
Alexis, are you a passionate photographer? Is that your passion? You don't know.
No.
You have no clue. Someone just gave you the camera and said, shoot, girl, shoot, shoot, shoot. And because Alexis is so sweet, she couldn't say no. Okay, and your name?
My name is Morgan.
Morgan, how you doing? I'm beautiful, thank you. Leave your love everywhere, I like that. How you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm beautiful, what's your name?
Ariel.
Ariel. Morgan and Ariel. This is reminding me of some sort of Disney princess type thing. I used to hang out with my daughter at the movies. I know all about your stuff. How you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, what's your name?
Maddie.
Maddie. Morgan, Ariel, Maddie. How you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Todo bien. What's your name?
Jada.
Jada, Jada, Jaida. Black folk always having to mess. Couldn't just be a Jada. How you doing, dear? What's your name?
Serena.
Serena. I'm Jaiya. Pleasure to meet you. Mucho gusto. Thank you for being here. What's your name, dear?
Savannah.
Savannah. These names are just so lyrical. We could do a whole poem right off your names. We can freestyle. You ready? No. She's ready. She's ready. So the reason I wanted to bring you up on the stage is because you're one of them. It's because we always need reminders in tangible ways of really what this is all about in the world, yeah? How many of you are parents? Show of hands. Yeah, we got mucho parents. Everybody in the room is really a parent, and that's an important thing for us to understand. In the old ways, in the old days, long before y'all were born, there used to be a thing called communalism. The way we existed on the planet together was about relationship before anything else. In the Latino world, we say la familia es todo. Family is everything. And the way you define family is everything. So family could be your neighbor, it could be your friend, it could be a teacher, it could be a professor, it could be one of these crazy people in the room. It's the way you define family is very, very important. And back in the day, in our relational understanding of life, in our communal way of being, in our indigenous way of being, we realized that we are mirrors for one another. And as we grow from conception to birth to toddlerhood to childhood to adolescence and into the strange land of adulthood, it was imperative the older that we got that we remembered who we truly are, correct? And what happens along the way, the journey is the older we get, the more we experience life, at least in this culture, we tend to forget who we truly are. We get filled with ideas, and they could be professional ideas, and we start speaking HR language like, I'm a social worker, S4, 17, 19, 13, level 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, reporting for duty, sir. And we forget that actually we're just a soul, and we came here as love, to love, be loved, to receive love, right? Now, you all are young enough that you probably still kind of remember more about who you are. Hopefully, we're being optimistic here with you and making this assumption. We're assuming that you have more memory than we do of what you're here for. And yet our professionalism causes us to forget this, and we fall into this falsity of the ego that tells us that we're the ones that have more of an understanding of what needs to be, and therefore we're here as grown folks to be your teachers, right? So the reason I wanted you to bless us on the stage is because I wanted us to have a tangible example and reminder, a memory of who we truly are. You know, if you look upon them and you see the vulnerability and the sensitivity, the optimism and hopefulness, if you see the dreams that they carry and the visions, if you see the hurt, the tender heart, the disappointment, if you see the youthful enthusiasm and exuberance, if you see all of that, if you look upon them and your heart opens and weeps and melts, then just know that you are looking upon yourself, family. This is one of the ways in which we can practice our self-love, our collective love, our mutual care, our remembrance of truth. And when we start to become depleted, our battery starts to die in this professional life we are living, just remember why we do this. Remember who we do it for. Remember what our true nature is. To be so young and have the courage and the will and the purpose to make efforts every single day, and your lives are not any easier than ours, but every single day you're making these efforts to grow, to heal, to self-know, to world-know, to evolve, right? To metamorphose, to, through alchemy, transform yourself into something even more beautiful. We admire you for that. We bow down to you for that. We want you to know how much we love you, we care for you, and that's not a professional emotion. That's a human one that we carry for you. And for the next several days, all of us are going to endeavor to make sure you feel that way, because you are our representation of the future seasons to come. We want you to feel deeply in this gathering the truth. When you hear a thing like residential care, if you hear all this professional language, it becomes easy to start treating all of this as though it only exists right here. We want you to know, and we want to role model for you, and maybe you can help role model for us what it means to be a human being, this week, okay? Some of us have forgotten. We show up as professional. We show up as professional. And so you have that opportunity to bless us as our teachers. I want you to claim that power for yourself and understand, even though you carry the label of intern, that doesn't mean that you are inferior, okay? It means that you have a superior source to draw from, to offer us who are no longer interns, maybe in a particular way, but we're always interning in life. So never devalue yourself, never disempower yourself, and spend this time just driving people crazy this week, you know? Roll up on them and giggle and laugh and just get them to loosen up, you know what I mean? Elbow them, nudge them, tell jokes. These people, they need a break. They need to, they've been through some stuff, okay? So you be that medicine in our family this week. Can you do that? Okay, thank you. We love you. We love you. Thank you. Thank you. They're going to kill Carrie after that. You didn't tell us he was going to mess with us. So, ACDC. I had no idea your band was so big. I mean, I was rocking your music back in the day, AC/DC. I didn't know you had a whole thing going on like this. This is amazing. I'm just playing with you. Some of you are like, AC/DC, does he know where he is? Like I said, too serious. Too serious. Shakespeare wrote something back in the day about Julius Caesar and the whole thing. I have not come to praise Caesar, but to bury him, or something like that. Did I get that right? Was I in the ballpark? How does it go, you English people? Come on. I have not come to, or we have not come to praise Caesar, but to bury him. Or was it the other way around? Was it the other way around? My man, I knew somebody actually paid attention at school. We have not come to bury Caesar, but to praise him. We have not come here to bury you under an avalanche of information, data, PowerPoints, charts, regression analysis, square fit, data, statistics. We have not come here to bury you. We have come here to praise you, to raise you, to lift you, to remind you, to praise you, to praise you, to praise you. In the sun of appreciation, affirmation, celebration, confirmation, validation. We have not come here to bury you under the weight of your professional life. We've come to raise you up into the sunlight of your purpose, your mission, and calling. We have not come here to drum into one another a soulless cacophony of noise that causes us to fall even deeper into a Walking Dead state, a zombie state. We've come to revitalize one another. We've come to revival, yeah? So if you want to take it to church, on a Wednesday, that's cool is what I'm saying. Let yourself feel things. Can you do that? Are we capable as mental health practitioners of feeling? Are we okay with feeling? I know I've come to love you because I'm a lover. And it took me a long time to fully embrace that truth. I knew it from the beginning, but then life happened. And life touched me. And in the confusion caused by the turbulence of my pain and circumstance, I began to resist that calling to be a lover and tell myself these extraordinary tales, these falsities, these tribal myths about who I was, and they were tales of being a destroyer. Alarms setting off constantly inside the sky of my trauma, telling me, you're not a lover, you're a hater, you're a fighter. Protect yourself, defend yourself, close, don't open, don't dilate, don't risk. If you risk, you'll be at risk. We call our young people at risk. Let's call them at promise. Our language matters. Our language matters. I think I'm here as part of loving you to plant seeds in our soil collectively for a new language, a new way of thinking not only about our young ones, but about ourselves. Not only about ourselves, but also about the families our young ones come from. We call ourselves residential centers. But I would proffer and offer and suggest, quite humbly, sisters and brothers, that when a care house becomes a warehouse, all hope is lost. And so we must be very careful with our language, because even when we repeat a term like a residential center, depending upon the way that that word residential reverberates in us, we are either strengthening the idea and ideology in ourselves that we're involved with something that has to do with housing, or by virtue of our singular definition of that term, hopefully, what we're really doing is planting a reverberation around the notion of caring for one another. When a care house becomes a warehouse, all hope is lost. And what we see across the society, across the nation, and in other countries, I've been blessed to travel and do this work in so many places. And I go into these environments, family, and you have beautiful souls with beautiful hearts doing a beautiful, noble, sacred work on behalf of sacred souls. And you see them in these environments, and some of the environments are pretty dreary, to be honest with you, the physical aspect, right? The colors and the fluorescent lighting and the absence of sound and song and reverie. And some of these environments are very colorful and bright, and some of them are like out where I live, there's a place by the sea, a residential campus by the sea, framed by mountains on the Pacific coast, an amazing thing. And yet what happens when you and I do not care for ourselves in this calling, this vocation, this ministry, this mission, is that in losing our wellness and charged with the lives of others in crisis, traumatized, bruised, and damaged, lost from our true identity into the abyss of thinking we are nothing more than professionals, this husk, this empty thing that accumulates knowledge and data. And by the accumulation of knowledge and data is going to be a better professional. We lose our care. We lose our care for ourselves first. So we turn against the self. That is the first betrayal. I'm talking about you and I, not our children. We turn against the self first. As we continue to lose our care and our wellness, then we turn upon each other. How many of you watch, and don't lie, we know some of you are ashamed and you're fixing to lie. How many of you watch The Walking Dead? Show of hands. Okay. Some of you are still lying. That's okay, we love you. So you would think that a show like The Walking Dead, especially if you haven't really watched it, you think that title is all about the zombies in the show, right? You think, oh yeah, that's that zombie show, Walking Dead. They're the Walking Dead. But if you really just get all philosophical with it for a moment, and if you really pay attention, what you see is that title, The Walking Dead, really applies not to the zombies, but to the human beings who are living in a state of acute and chronic stress and crisis and trauma with the ever-impending threat of the zombies all around them, yes? And so what happens is when you have a group of human beings or any living thing that is in those conditions, whether that be a child in a residential center or a professional practitioner in that place, when you have a living thing not caring for itself, living things not caring for one another, under those conditions, this constant climate of crisis and potential loss of life and danger, then predictable things happen and those human beings then become the walking dead. What makes them the walking dead is not a lack of access to information, data, notes, status, stats, pie charts. What makes us the walking dead is not a lack of information. It's not a lack of education. Y'all got your education or you wouldn't be here, right? Y'all are very well educated. What makes us the walking dead is not a lack of this. It's a lack of this. It's a lack of this when we become disconnected. Now, we don't ever lose this. It's that we lose our tether to this, and then we become the walking dead. At 5 a.m. yesterday, I left home and spent a wonderful 2 hours in LA traffic, making my way to the airport, LAX, and it was dark. And I was so grateful. I just kept looking up to the sky and just giving praise and thanks because of what my life has been. The opportunity to fly out here, and that airplane, man, it's a miracle, by the way. If you're not good at recognizing miracles, that's a best practice you might want to take up. It's a best practice, people, in your profession. Recognize the miracles, recognize the blessings, recognize the good things that are happening. And, Carrie said it earlier, we have a way of circulating negative stories, and that's because of our own trauma. That's the nature of trauma. It's a fan, it's a circulatory system for a negative story. But a reflection of our wellness is when we find ourselves circulating positive stories and hopeful stories. And here I am driving through LA traffic, still alive. You know what I mean? I'm still alive. Like, how many times have I been on those roads and seen other accidents, and I'm still here. And then I knew I was about to get on a piece of metal that was going to be in the sky for a period of time. And I was just depending on that piece of metal lifting up properly from the ground. I flew Southwest 737. I had to make sure, okay, what 737 are we talking about here? Because you don't want to just trust their official announcements that we've grounded our fleet, No, let me validate this situation, dude. So I was out there with the flashlight on the tarmac, the black dude on the tarmac with the flashlight. Let me see what this really is, And it got up in the air, and it stayed up in the air until it was supposed to come down. So I was grateful for that miracle. It's a miracle when you think about that. The dynamics, the aerodynamics that allow all of us to get up in the air and move and come somewhere like here. It was a miracle that my body could actually survive stuffed into the airplane seat built, more for like Carrie's body or something. I don't know. And then I was being stuck in traffic. I was late to board, and it's Southwest. I was like the last dude on the plane. Here comes the large black man walking down the aisles. Everybody's looking at me like, please, Lord, don't let him sit next to me. Please, Lord, don't let him sit. Please, Lord, please, Lord. And they're trying to make themselves look bigger. They're doing all kind of things, to avoid me. And I end up having to sit in the middle seat, right? All legs, broad shoulders. This shoulder's in some lady's chest. This shoulder's in some dude's nose. My knees are in the spine of the person in front of me. And, say, I'm grateful, man. I mean, this is my life. I'm going to New Orleans. And I get to be with people who serve souls, people who have a heart that's alive enough to serve souls. I get to go and love them. And I get to go and be loved by them. And it was beautiful. And Carrie, this woman, she's been stalking me. She stalked me for how long to get me to be a part of this. And when you're stalked in that way, when you're stalked in a healthy way, it just makes you kind of melt, especially if you've been stalked in unhealthy ways, right? And so I really appreciated her stalking of me, and that made me really excited about coming here. She was excited about me getting a chance to meet all of you and her daughters. By her daughters, I mean the interns you just met, and her enthusiasm, her human. You see, what I'm trying to suggest, people, is that nothing about Carrie's professionalism had me excited about coming here. It was her heart and soul, and my experience with it over months and months and months and months and months and months, right? That's what impacted me. And I got I got here yesterday about 5. I'm thinking, this is cool. I'm gonna lie down on the bed and get me a little rest, because I've been rolling all spring long, right? I'm like over 30 engagements in just this period, and I just, let me lie down and get me some rest. I'm thinking, it's good to be back in New Orleans, and Let me give me some rest. So I lay down on the bed and I queued me up some nice sleep music. And by sleep music, what I mean is the queuing up of the street music beneath my window. The trombone started probably at 5 p.m. Trombones that, had the vibratory power to penetrate not only concrete, but human tissue and bone. And it was just going right through me like an ultrasound. I felt my bladder and kidneys dancing. Things were being moved and rearranged inside of me. I thought, oh yeah, only New Orleans, right? And the drums, the percussive power of the drums could wake a volcano. And this was all happening on the street right beneath me, and I just was so thankful. Yeah, for real. Like, this is only New Orleans, right? Only New Orleans family. Family. I used to do a lot of, I don't like, the word speaking never really feels right to me, but I used to do a lot of healing work here before Hurricane Katrina. Some of you are so young that you may not have heard of Hurricane Katrina. There was this thing that happened. I'm just playing with you. Of course, you probably know better than us, internet generation. Beautiful souls. I would come down here. I lived in Maryland. I had been a professor at Howard University. Any of you familiar with Howard University? Show of hands. Okay, HU. HU. Is that a bison in the back? HU. Excuse us while we have our moment. That's two black men, don't get scared. We're just enthusiastic, that's not anger. Don't shoot. I'm bad, huh? This stuff wasn't scripted. So, I lived in Silver Spring, Maryland for a long time, and I'd come down here, and I work a lot with families, parents, resource providers, caregivers, with children of all ages, adolescents, the transitional age youth, caseworkers, administrators, judges, folks. And it was always an amazing thing. I'd never been received more warmly than in this area when I come down. And a lot of that is the culture. And I mention culture, and I'll keep mentioning culture because I'm a big believer in culture. I believe that whatever the culture is inside you, your mentality, your mental health, your persona, that culture can be changed because it started out as something and got changed into something along your journey. So I believe in the malleability of culture inside us. I believe in the malleability of culture around us, in our units, in our teams, in our offices, in our groups, in our agencies. I believe in the malleability of culture in our communities, in our counties, in our states, in our society. I believe culture can change because culture, by definition, is a changing thing. It's the weather, it's the climate, right? And I'd come down here and there would be, no matter what we were doing, it could be, an event like this, it could be a smaller event, but it was always a party, y'all. Like it's a cultural thing. Now here we are in this room and we've got our straight rows lined up and we're looking at the back of each other's heads and everything. But just imagine a party going on, feasting, food, music, the aromas of all that, the rhythm. You start to shake and you haven't even boogied in like 17 years, but you're feeling good. You're like, oh, okay, I can get with this, And all the while we're doing this. We're doing the professional stuff. We're doing the content delivery and receiving, right? And we're taking notes, but we're feeling so good while we're doing it that the way that it comes into us is just more profound. The way that it takes hold in us and then begins to germinate and then sprout and then come up out of us is just more potent. You see, we're more transformatory in the way that we gather. Now this happened every time I came down here before the hurricane. After the hurricane came, they asked me to come down about a year later. They were going to do a commemoration event, and it was taking place at an old black church in the community. And there were all of these folks, your people, practitioners, salud, healers, you, medicine people. And they were gathering to commemorate and give honor to those whose lives had been lost. and those who had survived. And now we're carrying all that trauma and grief and hopefulness of rebuilding in the community. And they asked me if I could birth a healing poem and share that with them in that moment. And as I shared that with them, it was such an honor to come down here for that, they began to weep. The waters rose again. First there was the flood from the hurricane. Turbulence always births rising waters. This is another way for us to look at trauma. If we understand the hydrodynamic of trauma, we understand that where there is turbulence, waters rise. Tsunami, high tide. And in that church that day, the tears came and came and came and came. And they shared with me a story, family, and the story went something like this. They said to me that of all the souls trapped in the Superdome, in the flood, following the storm, when so many people had vacated, right, had exodused. Is that a word, exodused? It's now a word. Exodused. Fled the area, trying to save their lives. But the community, so many of the community were stranded in the Superdome. Remember that? Right down the street, remember that? An inordinate number of those folks were you, were the healers. And they had an opportunity to evacuate with their families. Their employer said, you know, go ahead, we'll take care of you. You still got a job when you come back. We'll do whatever we can financially for you. Go be with your family. They had an opportunity to vacate, to evacuate, but you stayed. And many of them stayed in the Superdome in order to take care of, serve, be of service to be of support for the families in crisis and need. And in the Superdome, the conditions were inhumane. This is New Orleans in early September. We're talking about summertime for this area of the country. Heat, humidity. How many of you have been here in the summertime? Right? No AC up in the place. Babies crying and screaming, dead bodies, lack of food and water and sanitation. The conditions were horrible, were terrible, but there you were, the healers. And you weren't there with impatience, with coldness, with a closed heart. You weren't there expressing and manifesting your own weariness and fears, your own trauma. You were holding all of that stuff so that you could serve, so that you could reassure, so that you could cradle, so that you could be that medicine. And so this happened for as long as people were stranded in the Superdome. And so now, all these months and months later, I'm down here and I'm sharing this moment in the church, and the tears have come, and it's a new flood. It's a healing flood. And the stories come out, and the stories basically go like this. They say, Jaiya, a lot of the people who stayed behind in the Superdome were us, we're the healers. And what's happened in the months since is that many people who were stranded in the Superdome have ended up dying suddenly. Young women keeling over, heart attack, gone. And they said to me that many of those who have died of the trauma, acute and chronic, in the moment of the flood and in the long moment afterward, many of them were us healers, practitioners. And together, collectively, we gathered the meaning from that story. We extracted the nectar, the manna from that story. And what we realized is that it is something about your caring heart that places you in jeopardy, family. We tend to be a tribe who loves to talk about the children. And we want to talk about the children as a very maternal, paternal aspect of our being that causes us to focus on the children to the exclusion of our own well-being. But there's something about the nature of your caring heart which exposes you to hurt and trauma and bruising and tenderness and obstruction physiologically, neurologically, spiritually, emotionally, affectively, behaviorally, that if not tended to, if not gardened and cared for, can lead to our demise. Are you in agreement with me? Yes? Yes. Yes. And so everywhere I go, it's this interesting dynamic, because what I hear in many of the cultures of the agencies and places I go, the residential centers, etc., the story coming back to me goes something like this. Well, we don't have time to talk about and focus and gather around our own wellness because we've got real work to do. Tenemos que trabajar. We have to work. We've got to get to our work. We can't afford to talk about ourselves and how we're treating each other and how we're caring for each other, self-care, mutual care. It all sounds great. It sounds nice, but I'm anxious because I've got crises to manage. I've got work to do. How many of you have been exposed to that story where you work, and maybe it's coming out of you? Show of hands. Show of hands. This culturally conditioned mentality, really from birth, if you grew up in this country, that says you are not doing what you need to be doing unless you're in the classroom learning and taking notes and getting information and then pushing that information like a drug pusher on a street corner, right? Like you got to push that information. You got quotas, you got paperwork, you got processes to do. You got to push that information to the clientele. How many of you feel some sense of shame or guilt if you're not engaged in either stuffing yourself with information or pushing information? Be true. Show of hands. Show of hands. This is our culture, family. This is our culture. No estamos bien. We're not okay. We're not okay because our cultural conditioning, that narrative, we mean well, but that narrative has led us into jeopardy, into harm. Because there is always a flood, there is always a storm, and there is always a need to serve the people. But the thing that we have lost in the equation is that we too are the people. We're the people. So I want to share a story with you. And please, as I share this story, I would ask you to use your creativity and imagination to understand that this is really about you. Because there's a story about an adult like you working and nurturing the garden that is a young person. But that young person is actually you too. Does this thing... Okay, I could either squat, like let's see how my squat powers are going. Yeah, that's about good. That's good enough. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. ¿Listos? You ready? Okay. I lied. 2 stories. This book is called Beautiful. How many of you like to write creatively? Show of hands. Cool. How many of you do spoken word? How many of you like to sing? How many of you like to dance? Mm-hmm. How many of you like to romance? Yeah. All right. Feel the romance in this. We got to get you flowing. Now, this is from our young people. What they're doing here is they're trying to let us know in a loving spirit, but with firmness, as the young people can be firm, that the way we touch them matters. The way we see them matters. The way we imagine them matters. And that perhaps if we imagined ourselves in more beautiful ways, we would imagine them in more beautiful ways. Yeah? Okay. I read this piece once to a bunch of about 1,000 8th graders in Virginia. Part of Virginia, which, how can I put this? It was an interesting experience for me. Yeah, he said, hey, be nice. Are you Virginian? Yes, sir. This was a part of Virginia where, and by the way, every time I've been to Virginia, I am embraced warmly. I want you to know that. The true heart of a people really comes out in these kind of moments that's right. He said, come on, give it to us. When people have an opportunity to welcome you, to receive you into a moment, into a space, that's where you can tell who they really are. And I've had these amazing experiences, including at this middle school in Virginia. Now, the children, and if you think about a residential center, our schools, in a way, are residential centers, correct? Are they not? Yeah? How much time do our children spend there every day? They reside at our schools, yes? They do. And so it does matter that they be in relationships with their teachers and staff, instructors, administrators, window cleaners, everybody, bus drivers, hall monitors, that they be in relationships that are nurturing them and touching them in a way that heals their tenderness and trauma, correct? Yes. So here I am in this middle school, and it's just me, and it's even more of them than you. And I shared this, and they exploded. I mean, they exploded, and it was like it was the roar of slaves being liberated into freedom for the first time. These were children in Virginia. This piece is called See Me. This is in the voice of our children. Hey. Hey. Over here. Look over here. You got to look hard to see me. I mean, you see the skin of me and the sin of me, but you got to look deeper. I'm not a loser. I'm a straight keeper. I'm a 15-year-old packed with fears, but feeling bold. Emotions cold, heart laced with gold. I'm a busted up, rusted up, gonna dust it up 14-year-old. Y'all grown folks, you say I'm troubled, tainted, dysfunctional, got special needs, but y'all grown folks are the ones putting boulders on my path. You say I'm tripping, but I'm tripping on your grown folk stuff. Feel me. Your grown folk anger, your fear, your prejudice, your pain. I see you suffering in the purple rain. You say, let's get that boy, that girl some intervention, but family, what about your grown folk therapy? Because something is making you blind, you can't see me, and something is making you deaf, you can't hear me. Something is making you scared because you won't truly come near me. Something is making you cold because you can't feel me. Feel me? I act up and you put me on Ritalin, but I'm just dancing. Grown folks are the ones doing all the fiddling. Y'all play the wrong song, maybe your song, but not my song, so I try to step correct, but I keep getting your grown folk song wrong. For so long, I've wanted to wake up in the morning and hear my song. You say I'm putting on my tunes and tuning out the world, but I'm not tuning you out, I'm tuning me in, trying to find my frequency, a sound that feels good to me. I'm a 13-year-old switching homes, switching centers, switching campuses, switching hoods, switching codes, keep putting my stuff in a trash bag, but I'm tired of being the trash, and I'm not unpacking no more. Not unpacking my baggage, my trauma, my pain, my pride, my people, my trust. You see this right here? My attachment tool is starting to rust. You think I'm ungrateful to have a home, a place? I'm not ungrateful, I'm unsettled. You ever try to stand still and calm in an earthquake? My earth keeps quaking and I'm scared, but you keep wanting me to bond, so I keep faking, but inside I'm truly quaking. Nobody ever asked me what I want in a family. They just moved me like I was a dog. Then y'all wonder why I don't act house trained. I may be cracked and bent, but I'm not broken. My fate just got to smoke and see. I have my own ideas and agency about family and what feels good to me. Deep in the night, if I try real hard, I can find my dreams to what I want in life. I don't want no baby mama, baby daddy drama. Life done already up and took my mama. Never knew my pops got better relations with city cops. At least they come every time I'm in trouble. You ever wonder why I keep getting in trouble? Because cops is my pops and they spend time with me. My crew on the street, they spend time with me. I'm looking for time, not crime. But seems like the crime's the way to get the time, so I crime. I drop my sin like dimes. I'm that 12-year-old you call violent, but the world, after all, is on fire with your grown folk anger and screeching. I'm just the student of what you're teaching, and I'm not preaching, just reaching to make sense of this world. Don't get me wrong, I have my dreams. I have my dreams. I'm trying to build my life. I'm trying to pull fat catfish from my Lake Pontchartrain, so weary, but seems like I keep pulling pollution from my water, so dreary. I'm trying to find the sunshine. Life keeps bringing me rain. You say pray, have faith, good things will come to me today. But see, it's hard to pray when my nightmares keep breaking in on my day. You see, it's hard to pray when my nightmares keep breaking in on my day. Now, yesterday I had me a vision and a way to turn my life around. I'm going to take all the pain packed away in my chest, release it to the sky and give it a rest. I'm going to use it to show my baby sister how much I missed her. See, Pops tried to shoot my ma, missed her, and took out my sister. Now my heart's a blister because, Lord, I miss my baby sister. But now, family, now I'm going to turn my pain into paint, and I'm going to paint me a rainbow. See, show the young ones which way to walk, which way not to go. I'm going to be a teacher, a preacher, a healer, a reacher. I'm going to shine my light, shine it real bright. You want to know why? Because that way maybe you'll have to see me. You'll see I'm a 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18-year-old, a little bruised but a whole lot bold. So don't pity me, look down at me, frown at me, or grieve me. You best believe me, I'm going to shed my skin and shake my sin. I'm going to make you. I said, I'm going to make you see me. Thank you. Thank you. So it is a delicate, precise, and caring craft, art, vocation to be a sign language interpreter, especially when a man starts flowing into his poetry, accelerating. So we have our interpreters. Only on this side? Only on this side? 2 of you? Let's shower them with our love. So many of our human quandaries and conflicts and issues and troubles can be solved and resolved and dissolved simply by the simplicity of appreciation, affirmation, and celebration. Can you believe that? Can you fathom that? You and I, we've been raised in this culture to believe that all solutions must be some complicated thing that we arrive at after a 10-year longitudinal study, and then after we did the regression analysis and then submitted it to a peer-reviewed journal, and then after we formed a committee and then a steering group and then held a conference on it, and then after 17 years, finally we crowned this a resolution and a solution that's valid of humankind, right? That's how we're conditioned to think. But in our daily lives, we have the granular opportunity to heal one another through appreciation, affirmation, and celebration. What I mean is, don't be standing on the beach waiting for the sunset until you're going to feel happy. Don't be out there on the beach saying, man, I'm on the beach, but wait until that sun sets, then I'm really going to be joyful. I'm going to feel things when that sun sets. Man, woman, you're standing on the beach. You got grains of sand on your bare feet. That's a blessing. You got all those billions of masseuses, and they're touching you, right? You know what I'm saying? You're looking for the grandiose, but you're standing on the beach. You got grains of sand blessing you in every moment. So let us practice, family, best practice, so that we may further our outcomes of service. I'm using your language. I'm dipping into your language and bringing it back to my language and giving it to you as soulfulness. I'm saying, let's not wait for the grandiose opportunities to heal one another. In every moment, even just this week, can we endeavor and commit and devote ourselves to practicing appreciation, affirmation, and celebration, so that when we go back to our lives and we go back to our agencies and our residential centers, we go back to our people, we're a little bit better. We've strengthened the muscle of appreciation, affirmation, and celebration. When you see each other here at the hotel, can you endeavor to smile? Can you be warmth? Can you be sunshine? Can you be sunlight? Can you do that? Can you be sunrise? As everybody is cold and freezing and can't see in the darkness, we're all lost. Uh-oh. I'm about to be lost. We disempower ourselves when we don't recognize that we are the sun. I mean, don't be waiting for the sun to come out. You're the sun and you're in here. Touch people with your appreciation. Now back to what we said about language, the way in which we imagine each other. This piece is called New Language from the book Legendary. You ready? This is a mental health professional at a school. And she tells us this story. She says, she stayed after school. The dear child was only 14 when she came into my office that first day with eyelids at half-mast, her spine bowed as a sapling beside a windblown sea. As she poured out her story, catching, hitching, sobbing, I realized we had made her a bag lady, all of us. All of us. All over her body, she wore the layers of what we had told her all her life she was: at risk, delinquent, troubled, poor, learning disabled, oppositional, angry, resistant, unworthy, pitiful, unfortunate, special needs, abused, neglected, abandoned. Our language. We had saturated her with our language of what was wrong with her. We had woven a litany of shame into her frayed composition. Feel me, she wore each of these labels as a piece of clothing, piles of burlap and grime concealing her true nature, stifling her ability to breathe. Y'all? She wore each of these labels as pieces of clothing. The ensemble was enormous. In a flash of awareness, it came to me that I could not truly see her through her stacks of self-rejection. Neither could she see herself. The labels had become her stash of self-slur and denunciation. She pushed these invectives around like a grocery cart in front of her, forming a barrier against the world. She had internalized our language and made it her defense system, her missile system, her armory, her castle and moat and flaming arrows. It had grown in her bones, her marrows. She had become skilled at recognizing put-downs scattered around her home, in the streets, at the school, and on our residential campus. She would pick up that litter, put it in her overburdened cart, make it hers. She was hoarding stained trinkets from society's gutters, stuffing them into her awful identity, fiercely protecting her putrid pile of self-ideas from anyone who tried to take an item. This dear child had burrowed deep into the accumulation of our insults. We call them assessments. For her, they are insults. And now she was beating us to the punch, calling herself these things before we could spit them at her. I think it hurt her less to be splattered with our judgments if she had already judged herself with the same unanointing oil. She was a soaking wet creature hiding beneath a mound of humiliation. She was hiding from all of us, from everything, most of all from herself. I realized she was never going to change anything about herself, and nothing was going to ever change for her. She would spend the rest of her life scavenging filth as a bag lady unless someone helped her put down her load. Family, it had to be me. It had to be us. It had to be we. See, I would be that one steady ground for her, that one solid place, that enduring force, unending belief in her world of shifting sand and sweeping shadows. I would be that sanctuary of stillness, and I would be her leaning tree. At first, she lashed out at me. How many of you have had that happen? At first, she lashed out at me. A mother animal protecting her den. I had to go on a quest for new language, a different logic. I had to convince her that what she prized was in fact her enemy, and that what she truly needed she saw instead as foe. I offended her greatly. We must be willing to offend our young ones with the loving truth. Yes? Yes. Be willing to offend. I offended her greatly, and still I endured. I said, honey, We're going to work together to take off all these clothes, to unpack and discard all this trash. We're going to teach you how to reject the garbage people throw at you. You're going to learn to see beauty again. If we imagine, family, our mentality as the ocean, we can then understand that what we are doing with one another and with ourselves on the solid ground, on the earth, always ends up in the, what happens on land always ends up in the ocean. And so in our actual oceans, we have floating piles of trash, miles and miles and miles long. We have plastics and microplastics that are moving their way up they're going from the microorganisms and the phytoplanktons into the minnows and the crawfish, Narlins, the crawfish, and then into the trout and the bass and the bigger fish, and from them into the larger fish, the swordfish, right? And they're going finally into the sharks and the whales, and then into us. The matriculation of all that plastic in the ocean is a representation of what's going on in the mental health of all of us. Our mentality is an ocean, and what is happening in our physiology, in our neurology, in our neurobiology, is that a word? It is now. In our behavior, in our emotions, in our relations, in our society, it's all ending up in our mentality. See, family, what I'm saying here in this interlude is that we have made a fatal mistake in defining mental health as an isolated, insulated, independent, dynamic, and atmosphere separated without consequence from the rest of our being and system. Are you with me? You feel me on that? We've made a vital mistake in our culture, this culture for 500 years, since the displacement and genocide of the indigenous ways. And I don't mean just the indigenous ways that were here, I mean the ones we all come from. We were all indigenous people at once, meaning that we understood the vitality of relationship, right? We understood that and we lived in it. And for 500 years, we've been practicing what? Separation, individualism, isolation, dislocation, displacement. We've been practicing it. It's been government ordained on local levels, on federal levels. We've been saying exist as an individual, get yours. Don't worry about the next one. Get yours, get your resources, plunder the earth, get yours. And in the practicing of our psychology of separation, we've also done that to our professional and academic and intellectual understanding of issues. We silo everything. We have gatherings where it's only for mental health professionals, only for child welfare professionals, only for educators. We silo everything. We segregate everything. And in doing so, we've missed the point that mental health is a reflection of holistic health. You are a holistic practitioner. Don't get lost in your HR language. You are a healer. Feel me? You feel me? Back to the story. I told her, you're going to learn to see beauty again. And most of all, I promise you this. I, your professional, am going to change. I'm going to learn a new language for you. So see, my understanding was rising. We, her caretakers and authorities, had been persistently waiting for her larva state to transform into a winged attraction. We had been persistently waiting. Instead, what she needed was for us to look at her now in her caterpillar form with new eyes. You with me? Don't wait for the butterfly. See the beauty in the caterpillar. See the opportunity and touch that. All we do is talk to them about what they will be, but they are suffering a rejection from what they are and how it is being received. I needed to see the butterfly morphing inside her chrysalis so that we could tell her stories of who she was latently. She needed our bridge to her love's affair. We want them to self-love, but we don't give them that bridge. The work that I did with her was difficult. She had no attraction for labels that told of her value. She did not want them in her cart, did not think she could trade them for useful things on the street. We took long walks together so she could learn how to gather goodness. At first, she bypassed all manner of beauty, seemed not to even notice the glimmer. She was growing dimmer. She almost salivated at the pollution, though, swerving toward it like a hound at a rabbit's hole. When we passed by storefront windows, she never looked at her reflection. When I asked her to, she broke down into tears, something terrible. She said, "I do not know that stranger in the glass. She terrifies me." All this while I worked at changing myself. I needed to learn to list her good things first. We needed to learn to list her good things first. I came up with new names for her. I shared them with my colleagues, friends, and family forcefully. I shared them at the staff meetings repeatedly. I shared them in a murmur to myself in the sweetness of my dreams, and even in the scalding heat of my nightmares, I repeated these new names for her. I was determined to plant new seeds. When she struggled with a school exam, I called her a rare and priceless learner. I didn't shame her. I didn't call her disabled. I didn't call her special needs. Rare and priceless learner. I talked about her anger as a molten fire that she would smelt into gold. Alchemist. I introduced her to this beautifying, loving, hazing mist. I learned to call her magnificent majesty. I called her Oshun. I called her great, glorious, glowing, even if I had to convince myself first. Before I had been her bag lady helper. Now I was her beauty chaperone. I kept reciting the mantras of her worth to myself at night and to her at day. She kept inserting her old language, the slings and stonings with which she was comfortable. I kept erasing her obsolete alphabet. One day we stopped before a storefront window. She stared at her reflection. It was the first time I'd seen her do something like this. I asked her what she saw, and she said, family, "I see a beautiful stranger. She scares me to death." In that moment, I knew change was on the cusp. Thank you. I saw a quote from Dr. Bruce Perry in your program about how, relationships, without relationships, we really cannot achieve in this work. We can do this work. We can continue to engage in intellectual exercises around the merry-go-round, right, the carousel. But to change generational patterns of brokenness and hurt in families and communities, that lineage of sorrow, to actually change our outcomes so that we're not having the same conversations that we've been having since the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, and 90s. We won't be having those in 2030 and 2040. To actually heal, to revitalize the healer in us as a society and cultures. It is important that we put relationship before task, relationship before process and paperwork. How many of you went to school to become social workers and you ended up being a paper worker? Show of hands. Show of hands. Come on, be real. So much paper. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen on the computer screen and the rising manila folders. I'm growing older. There's a term I came up with that came to me, mutual care. It's in that book, Your Caring Heart. And it describes the spirit and the mentality by which we learn to care for each other again. How many of you live in neighborhoods where neighbors don't even interact with each other? I've been living in this neighborhood almost 3 years, and the other day my next door neighbors introduced themselves to me for the first time. They were apologetic because they knew it was wrong. They knew something's unnatural about the way we're coexisting, right? But it's our culture. What I see in your offices is beautiful souls, just like the children you serve. And just like the children you serve, you are in a drought, a desert, a dearth. You're socially isolated, spiritually isolated from one another. Your greatness has really not been invited into the circle. So you aren't able to bless the tribe with your true giftedness. What do I mean by that? Jaiya, what do you mean by that? Well, let me tell you. There was a teenager back in Albania back in the day, and she received this calling to do what you do. She knew she was supposed to be a healer. But she was a teenager, she was in Albania, she was kind of stuck. But the fire grew in her stronger and stronger, and she could not resist it. She had Macedonian blood, she was Albanian. Finally, the fire in her grew to a point where she could not deny it any longer, and she said, I'm gonna leave my home and my family, my friends, everything I've ever known, maybe to never see them again. She traveled to another land, another continent. And there she encountered all kind of bureaucratic mess because she was working within an organization that had bureaucratic realities. How many of you deal with bureaucratic realities in this room? Yeah, some of you are just in denial. That's okay. We're not just trauma informed here, we're trauma sensitive. We're sensitive to you, boo. We got you, boo. She was dealing with bureaucracy and sexism and male patriarchal misogyny, et cetera, in her organization. She kept advocating. Carrie's big on that. We got to be advocates. She kept advocating for the ones in need, saying we need to be with them in a new way, in a new relationship. We need to be with them on the streets. Back in the day, to our interns, there used to be a thing called writing letters. And you would take and you would actually have to send it, and you'd have to go through the horror of licking the envelope and the stamp. And the horror of waiting, waiting. There was this thing called waiting. And she sometimes would wait, weeks or months to get a letter back from her superiors, her administrators. And they would usually say things like, well, you mean well, your idea sounds great, but we're dealing with our bureaucratic realities. We have policies and procedures. This is the way we've always done things. When you hear people say, well, this is the way we've always done things, run. That person's not trying to be part of any change. That's not a revolutionary. That's not Che Guevara, right? No, that's just like a rock in the road. She kept persisting and persisting and persisting because that's a best practice in your field, persistence. Is it not? Then we have to persist. So she persisted to the point that they got so tired of this woman, and they believe me, they were judging her as a woman. They were basically saying, we don't know if that's the voice of God telling you we need to change. I think that you might just be hysterical. The language we apply according to our prejudices, right? Like sometimes I'm on the phone with people who are reaching out to me as a speaker, and it becomes apparent after a while, the spirit on the phone becomes apparent that they are caught up in their prejudices. They don't know me. The language that they will attach to that prejudice is something like this. Wow, you sure are articulate. 2019. We become sensitive as souls on earth in our journey to people using certain language according to their prejudices through which they see us, correct? As a woman, you become sensitive. You sense when people are not seeing you, they're seeing their idea of a woman, yes? Okay, so she was dealing with this. Finally, they said, get out of here. They gave her permission to follow her vision because they were just tired of her. So sometimes you gotta just pester your people into giving you what you want in this work. You really do. Without her persistence, she would have never began the work of the Sisters of Charity in Calcutta, India, and become Mother Teresa. And they used to say to her also, because she was a woman and a little woman at that, so now they were being sexist and sizist. Is that a word? They were being sizist and sexist, the double entendre, the double dip of scoops. And they were saying, how do you manage to serve millions of suffering souls? And Mother Teresa wasn't the sweet little old lady we imagine. History tends to whitewash people like that. She was fierce, and she had to be, just like you. Because you're swimming upstream against the current of a culture that dehumanizes children and families, yes? and it dehumanizes you. And so her response to that, she was offended and she would say, ek, 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 ek. In Greek, the word ek, ek, means one, and it was her way of saying, I don't serve millions of souls, I serve one soul at a time. And in that moment that I have with that one soul, I give everything and have the utmost everlasting faith that if I give what I have for that person, I will have given everything that I have for that person. And that in return, that person will bless me with everything that she or he has for me. She says, I do not overwhelm myself and stress myself out thinking about numbers, budgets, caseloads, etc., etc. That's the first step toward burnout, fatigue, depression, unwellness. And she said this, as long as I am operating from the infinite well of my love and compassion, I never grow tired. She said, it is only when I become disconnected from my source of love and compassion that I immediately become exhausted. Follow me, family. What she's saying basically is compassion fatigue is a myth. It's a misnomer. Compassion does not fatigue. It is infinite. We fatigue when we become disconnected from our compassion. You feel that? You feel that? Compassion does not fatigue. We fatigue when we lose our compassion. So ultimately, if you're questioning why wellness matters in your work, please understand all your professionalism is wonderful. It's beautiful, right? It's the frosting on the cake. Your CEUs, your titles, your degrees and certificates. We accumulate these things and we think that the more we accumulate them, the more able we are to serve. In many cases, the more we accumulate of these things, the less able we are to serve because we are burying our humanistic giftedness of love and compassion. When I was a child at the window in the home, looking out the window, 2, 3, 4 years of age, just a little dude, and the world was so big, I would watch the social worker's car come up the street, the healer, the practitioner, the mental health provider, and I would watch her come up the street in her car. I can remember this like it's yesterday. I was born in the system. I was born in La Tierra del Encanto Nuevo Mexico. I was born homeless, helpless, nameless, no birth certificate, faceless, helpless, hopeless, graceless, tasteless, touchless. I was born that stat, and it blessed me because immediately I was forced to confront the reality of relationship with myself and with the world. And here I was at the window, looking out the window at the relationship that would determine my life, this practitioner, and she's coming up the street in her car. And I remember it like it's yesterday, even though I have blocked out the memory of much of my childhood. But you matter so much that the memory of you in the children remains clear as yesterday, clear as today, and it is in me. And I'm watching you drive up the street, and I remember the number of pine trees in the mountains in New Mexico. I remember the rims on your car and the paint on your car. I remember the chipping on the car. I remember the speed at which you drove. All of these were indications to me of whether you wanted to come see me or whether I was a burden to you. And I watched you fix your face in the mirror before you got out the car, doing things with your mascara and your hair in the rearview mirror. I'm watching all of this because it's my indicator as a child as to what your intentions are and what your wellness is. I'm watching the way you get out of the car and the way you walk up the stairs to the landing where I stood as a little silent boy, black boy, lost boy. And you were so big, you were enormous. You towered over me and I was just praying. I was praying. Please, let her love me. Let her care for me. Let her not be irritated and annoyed with me. Let her have had a good night's sleep. Let things be going well for her in her life. Let her love life be normal. I'm 2 years old, 3 years old. Let her love life just be flowering and beautiful. Let everything, let her have just won the lottery, anything, Lord. Because I need her to be present with me. I need her to make decisions on my behalf, and I'm listening to the knocking on the door. Is it a friendly knock? Is it a rushed knock? Do you make people feel that you are rushed when you are with them? If so, you are touching them, and the touch is permanent. I open the door and the knob's above my head because I'm a little dude and she's big. She's my world. She's my sky. And she opens the door and my whole life now depends on the face she makes when she looks down at me. Is she gonna frown at me? Is she gonna drown me in a dehumanized way? Is she the walking dead or is she alive? Is she in touch with her own hurt, her own trauma? Is she afraid of me because of the rising tide of prejudice that is only unleashed because she hasn't handled her own woundedness? Has she removed the obstructions from her heart so that she can flow with me, so she can receive my flow? And she smiles at me and her face is filled with warmth like Sarah yesterday when I got to the hotel. Where's Sarah? Is Sarah in the room? Sarah, she didn't want me to point her out like that. She's over there, oh Lord. She's terrified. I just traumatized her. The good thing is we've got a room full of mental health professionals to serve you afterward. I just come, traveling all day, 12 hours or something. I'm about to get to the hotel. Like I'm about to get to the elevator, right? Like that's the holy grail. If I can get to the elevator, I'm gonna make it. I can go to my room and collapse. And there comes Sarah. Jaiya, John. Her face was so warm and genuinely excited to see me, like the social worker that day, like the mental health professional that day. And I tried to tell Sarah, she didn't understand this. That means everything at any age, yeah? So I go and sit on the couch with this professional and she opens her manila folder. And she's sitting professionally, cross-legged. I can't do that for you, sorry. And she's dressed professionally, and she opens her manila folder professionally. I am trying to say to you, family, to my brothers and sisters in this room, in that moment, that experience, I, the child, resided not in a residential center. I resided in a relationship. The walls, the windows, the doors, the ceiling, the fireplace, the furniture, all of that was by virtue of our relationship. It was you. You were my home. You were my residence in that moment. The decisions you made on my behalf, your ability to see me clearly. And in that moment, I could care nothing at all about your professionalism. I needed you to be a human being. I needed you to be whole. You used to be able to do that as a child before the world got a hold of you. We all used to be able to. The question is child welfare or child farewell? That is the question. That is the question. Don't get lost in legislation. Don't get lost in policy. Don't get lost in all of the noise. Use that as frosting for the cake, but the cake is in you. The cake is in you. I want to conclude by getting up off my knees. It's not an easy thing. My ground's far away. Mary Jo will bless us with this framework of really thinking about this work in a human rights reality, which I think is very, very synchronized with the message I've been sharing with you. We need to kind of remind ourselves that this is about decency, morality, and ethics. How is it that we are to treat each other going forward? We can't let the past be our determinant because we haven't done so well in the past. And so what is the human right for dignity, nobility, and sacredness? And not just for our children, but for each of us. And so she's going to touch on all of that. We have Charles tomorrow, right? And Dr. Mira. Charles will be breaking down the recipe for resilience, and Mira with LGBTQ. We have these opportunities to fill ourselves with more information and insight. I hope and pray that we also fill ourselves with more love and compassion, and not from each other, but from within ourselves. It's this untapped thing that we're holding on to. We've developed a cyst around our greatness. That's what happens in the body when you're not flowing. It has this way of calcifying to protect itself. and everything becomes a cyst. Your heart literally can become encysted, right? But you must persist in breaking that open, that boundary, and dare to be warm to one another. Let's do that, right? When I was living in Nepal, the Tibetan holistic doctor said to me, we raise our children in our culture to understand that when people come into your life, the first thought you should have is not that they are your next burden. Your first thought should be, life has blessed me. It thinks so much of me that it has blessed me with a new teacher. That's a cultural lesson that you get raised with in Nepal and Tibet, but not here. And so you and I arrive at our professional life, and we tend to get stressed out by each person that comes in need into our life, don't we? Because we define them as another burden. We may have our caring heart operating, but we feel like I don't have enough time in my day, I don't have enough resources and support, and my caseload is far too deep. And so our immediate reaction is to go into our lizard brain, spray the chemicals of adrenaline and cortisol through our whole being, which just inflames us, and now we are less well. And we have less access to our love and compassion. So let our first thought be, anytime someone is in need and I have the opportunity to serve, to be of support, this must mean that life thinks so highly of me that it has blessed me with a new teacher. 680 new teachers I've been blessed with today. I would be wearing the t-shirt, I don't know if any of you have it, that says, I might hug you. I got one of my shirts, I might hug you. Oh, we got a I might hug you over here. Yeah, you want to take her up on that. But I'm a hugger, and I have medicine. I've got long arms, big hands. I've got medicine. I'm like the hugging saint, Amma from India. So I'll be here as long as you need today. I hope you will come to me and bless me with your life. And we can cry together, laugh together, take selfies, sign books, whatever you want. If you take a selfie, you're down here. Don't cut off my head. How many selfies? Make sure you angle that situation right. I love you, and that's why I'm here. I'm very clear as to what I am and who I am, why I am. It took me a long time to learn what healing really is all about. But, ever since then, I've come to understand that you and I, people, we gotta, and don't take me too literally, I'll get in trouble with Carrie. We gotta drop our clothes. We gotta get buck naked, right? Buck naked. What I mean is drop all the identities that cause you to be stiff and tense, with yourself and each other. Break it down, get jiggy with it. You're in New Orleans, man. Eat some beignets, whatever you need to do, drink some stuff, whatever you need to do, just loosen it up, right? If you go home from here more tight and tense than when you came, y'all, man, you missed out. You missed out. So enjoy Mary Jo, enjoy one another. Know that all of us children like me, we really do love you. You leave an imprint that lasts forever. Bless you. Peace.